Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our webinar on biodiesel distribution, progress, obstacles, and opportunities, brought to you by Avalara and AmeriGreen Energy. My name is Ron Cutterba. I'm the editor of Biodiesel magazine, and we're pleased to have you all with us today. We have a wonderful panel lined up for you this afternoon to discuss the complexities and status of the North American biodiesel supply chain. As many of you know, selling biodiesel isn't just about fuel transactions. It's about building and keeping relationships. Like any relationship, the one between a biodiesel supplier and a distributor is a two-way street. Wholesalers and distributors want certain things from their suppliers, for instance, fuel quality assurance through mechanisms such as BQ 9000 certification and adequate product storage. And suppliers want certain things from their distributors too, like predictable purchasing at a fair price and steady outlets for their fuel. Sometimes these relationships can go bad, as I wrote about in my Fame Forum blog in July on biodieselmagazine.com. A biodiesel producer and friend of mine in the industry, he goes by Bio Joe Renwick of Midlands Biofuels in South Carolina, had his fuel distributor, who owns about 30+ convenience stores in the region, pull Joe's used cooking oil accounts from him without notice, leaving Joe in a spot where he felt forced to cut ties with his distributor and modify an existing long-time relationship he had with his landlord. And that's a move that ultimately facilitated Joe taking control of his own distribution chain and, as a result, making much more money per gallon. So building relationships is important, but perhaps even more significant is maintaining and nourishing those relationships in this business and making sure all parties involved are benefiting from the partnership. I don't think it's any secret that the past few years have been tough on this industry with federal renewable fuel standard and tax credit uncertainties, and more recently low diesel prices have compounded that difficulty. Some biodiesel plants have shut their doors, unable to endure the market, leaving distributors faced with finding new suppliers and prompting some wholesalers to change their business models to survive. AmeriGreen Energy is one of those wholesalers that has adapted by diversifying its portfolio, and we'll hear Mike Devine talk about that later this afternoon. And the complexities of the tax codes on federal, state, and local levels are also troubling for the biodiesel supply chain, and we're going to hear about solutions to those nightmares from Avalara's Bubba Lang. And on the retail side, we'll hear from Coachan Biodiesel Co-op's President Brian Roberts on a survey and feasibility study results that have led to their development of a cloud-based POS system. So we have a lot of variation represented on our panel today, which speaks perfectly, in my opinion, to the breadth and depth of this industry and its distribution chain. A quick note before we begin with the presentations: if you have a question for our speakers, feel free to type it into the panel on the right side of your screen. And after all of the presentations, we will get to as many of the questions as possible during our Q&A session. At this time, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor, Avalara.
Founded in 2004 and privately held, Avalara helps businesses of all sizes achieve sales tax, VAT, GST, excise tax, and other transactional tax compliance by delivering comprehensive, automated, cloud-based solutions that are fast, accurate, and easy to use. Avalara's end-to-end suite of solutions are designed to effectively manage complicated and burdensome tax compliance obligations imposed by federal, state, local, and other taxing authorities in the United States and internationally. Avalara has become the proven leader in fuel tax automation. With comprehensive support for all major U.S. jurisdictions, hundreds of companies depend on Avalara tax automations for fuel solutions, from small, single jurisdiction filers to the largest oil companies processing millions of monthly transactions. 44 of the top 100 convenience stores and 5 of the 6 super majors use Avalara software. The solutions integrate with dozens of back-office ERPs, providing a quick and easy enhancement to business as usual. Fuel industry tax professionals and government tax authorities alike have come to trust Avalara to calculate and file taxes reliably and accurately. Headquartered in Bainbridge Island, Washington, Avalara employs over 1,000 worldwide with offices across the United States and in England and India. To learn more about how our products can help you save time and gain confidence in your tax calculations and returns, email exciseinfo@avalara.com. Again, that's exciseinfo@avalara.com. For additional resources related to biodiesel taxation challenges, visit alternativemotorfuels.avalara.com. Ron, back to you.
I'm pleased to welcome our first speaker today, Bubba Lang. Bubba is the Senior Vice President of Solutions Engineering for Avalara. Bubba, welcome to the broadcast, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. As it's mentioned earlier, this section of the broadcast is going to focus on the challenges that face the biodiesel industry when it comes to excise taxes, both calculation and compliance. The biodiesel world is still in its growth stage when it comes to the pattern of developing taxation laws at the state and government levels. It's not as far along the line of maturity as its cousin, the ethanol, is. Ethanol basically has already gotten itself down to where it's basically almost sold always in either 100% ethanol, E85, E10, E7, or E5, and very rarely sold in any other combination. Whereas biodiesel can go anywhere from B100 to B99.9 all the way down to any combination till you get to B2. So this wide range of combination of biodiesel that's sold out there has its complications within inside of the industry itself. Biodiesel is also utilizing the same supply chain for the most part that regular fuels are. Regular fuel taxation in itself, coming from the refinery for gasoline and diesel, has its own set of challenges, and biodiesel stretches those challenges throughout the process. We're going to talk about the challenges from 2 points of interest here. Regulatory complexity is the first one. Now, when we talk about regulatory complexity, you're talking about 50 states, one U.S. jurisdiction, Canada, counties and cities, all multi-layered tax reporting and nexus requirements that are conformed and changing on a constant basis. The regulatory complexity also has to deal with the fact that most ERP systems don't deal with the gross, net, and build issue that taxation has to deal with. So you have to have special functionality within inside of your software just to handle whether a state is taxing at a gross level or a net level for the product, because as we all know, fuel expands and contracts with heat. So it could be everything converted back to the net gallon, or you could be taxing on the gross gallon, or you could be taxing on neither net or gross based on the billable structure of the jurisdiction that you're in. Along with regulatory changes that have to be monitored and tracked by your organization, then you have to get those regulatory changes identified, processed through your IT group, and then disseminated and migrated through the supply chain and in the IT structure within inside of your organization used to support your purchase and sales of these biodiesel fuels and regular fuels throughout the process. Process inefficiencies are often complexities that are pushed down to lower levels. So it's often these costs and risk remain hidden and invisible to upper management. Regulatory complexity is the world we live in. At every level of government, tax authorities are looking to creative ways to raise funds. Not only is it complex, it's constantly changing. And then, of course, you combine that with the process inefficiencies, which results in IT complexity that evolves over time, as new technology and company acquisitions results in disparate solutions that must be reconciled. Manual process then fill in the gaps and require both IT and tax departments to be involved in system updates, answering customer questions, filing taxes, and support audits. Both of these complexities combined together result in a business risk to your organization. As we know, the fuel industry in itself by nature is a very low margin, high volume industry. You can't afford to make risk with fines, fees, and penalties from government agencies simply because you fail to report your taxes properly and or calculate and charge your customers proper taxation. As we get just a little bit more involved in this, if you think about it, the regulatory complexity, renewable fuel standard is a moving target. And in 2014, actually, it didn't get passed till middle of the year and became retroactive. So half of the industry was trying to figure out, do I operate under the assumption that the renewable fuel standards and credits are going to be there for me or not? And if you're switching that process midstream and then trying to go retroactive and recalculate everything, you could find yourself fighting that battle on a losing front. There is complex taxability nexus rules that you deal with, and of course multiple tax and return types. Exemption license processing is also something that has to be reviewed on a regular basis by jurisdiction, and then your system has to ensure that you have the proper certificates and can produce the proper certificates and licenses as auditors come in post transaction to determine if you did tax and report properly within inside of the system. So your research is monitored inside your tax department. The tax department then has to take this research that it finds, translate it into, hey, IT group, I need you to maintain, update tax programs and data to match this changing laws, rules, and regulations. Tax now is applying resources. IT is now applying resources to maintain this. Then tax and IT have to test and verify as you migrate the code change throughout your process. All of this then gets you down to the point where you're ready to calculate taxes and fuel taxes. From an overall standpoint, just look at the complexity of biodiesel from a specific complexes. For example, in Florida, it's 31.6 cents per gallon. A license is required. Reporting code is B00, and the product's measured by a net gallon. In Illinois, it's wide open. Everything is treated just as if though it was diesel. In Iowa, there's 32.5 cents per gallon. License is required, and there's two reporting codes, 170 and 284, and it's based off the gross gallons. North Carolina has 36% per gallon. It also requires a license and uses the common 284 FTA code, but it's reporting off of net. South Dakota is 22 cents per gallon, has a license requirement, and is, of course, 28 in gross. Texas is exempt for biodiesel. So let's just think about that concept there for a second. At the federal level, B100 is exempt. There are no excise taxes on B100. But you're in an organization that's trying to ensure that your longevity is going to be there. So you've decided you're going to take your B100 and you're going to blend it to make a B20 product, and you're going to sell that so that you can broaden your risk across your market as price changes. And of course, now we're looking at $38 per gallon barrel of oil. Those things come in handy to ensure your safety and longevity in the industry. So as you blend B20, you're going to find out that Texas still doesn't tax that 20% of that load that's biodiesel, but does tax the 80% that is diesel. Now the federal government has completely flipped to not taxing the biodiesel, but taxing it completely at for the entire load at the entire diesel rate for the federal government. So the complexity is out there for you. Biodiesel state law incentives vary greatly also. For example, in Kentucky, there's a $1 credit for B100 renewable diesel produced and used in blend processes. In Iowa, there's a 0.045 gallon credit for B5 or higher sold by retailers. These credits then have to be worked with inside of your system and migrated through your system, and we show that complex structure also. Traditionally, fuels are at the refinery, they're transported, they're in the bulk system. There's a supplier terminal which becomes the differentiator for tax laws, rules, and regulations between the bulk system and the primary distribution chain, and tax laws and rules in the secondary distribution chain. Then, of course, the distributor carrier is below the rack, having another set of tax rules apply to them. In biodiesel situations, often the transportation mode and supply chain bypasses that supplier terminal. That leaves the person trying to interpret tax laws at the mercy of, am I in the above the rack, am I at the rack, or am I below the rack on this transport that went directly to a distributor? Those type of things have to be monitored, tested, and reviewed and put into your system, and it has to apply differently across the 50 different jurisdictions within the U.S. So if you think about it, IT complexity, you have entrenched technical legacy technology out there that's built to support the oil and gas industry. You have multiple back office systems with heterogeneous tax solutions, multiple rate, rule, and customer databases by division, jurisdiction, tax type, And then you have growth through acquisition to deal with. Spreadsheet-based manual processing require aggregate tax data for filing. Tax solution ownership spread across IT technology silos could cause you to have various tax calculations for the exact same transaction. So as your IT department tries to keep all your various systems intact, for example, you may have an SAP system for your secondary transactions, you may have a trading system for your bulk transactions, and you may own and operate a terminal or a production facility, then you have a terminal operating system for those. Those three systems all have to maintain both the tax calculation and the tax detail for tax reporting within inside of the system. So as your IT department's trying to keep all these things maintained and all the bug fixes going on, and you're applying on top of that exemption certificate applications by the tax department, as tax departments come back in and find updated rules and rates that have to be migrated through this process, you start to see the tangled web that you start to read just to be able to calculate your transactions. After the accounting close, you have to go through that tangled web to make sure that you pull all the proper transactions, aggregate those transactions, evaluate them, and report them properly on the different schedules and returns that are required by the 50 different jurisdictions within inside of the system. So that being said, if you look at the picture, you have your IT department out there currently working to maintain and keep your production system live. Your tax department's out there researching tax laws and changes. As the tax department determines laws, changes that are going to impact your IT system, they have to work with your IT department. This strain on resources within inside of your system is never ending because everything changes on a monthly basis in this environment. Now your finance department has to be involved to make sure that the GL processing and the reconciliation of the GL is taking place to ensure that you're not paying too much taxes or you're not paying the correct amount of taxes. All of this then rolls down to your customer service reps and other supporting players. As you take on a new customer and try to expand your business or you go into new markets, they need to know what's the correct questions that need to be answered and asked to these customers, input it as master data into the system so that I'm going to apply the proper taxation to the transactions as I deal with them. Financial risk is very, very large when it's associated with not being in compliance with your taxation by your jurisdictions. Just an example, penalties for failure to register with the IRS equal $10,000 plus $1,000 for each additional day you remain unregistered. Required to be registered for diesel if you're blending biodiesel with diesel is a requirement with the IRS. So if you start business in a new area on January 1st, 2012, and you don't register on June 30th, 2013, you're actually looking at a penalty of $557,000, which would eat directly into your margin of profit on that business model that you're dealing with. For more information on the control, monitoring, and automation of this tax complex world that you're dealing with, feel free to reach out to any one of us at the previously mentioned connectivity and communication points that you see on your screen right now. At this point, I'd like to turn it back to our moderator.
Hey, thanks, Bubba. Very well done. After listening to your presentation, I'm glad to hear that there's companies out there like Avalara that understand these complexities. Thank you. Appreciate that information. And we'll have you stay on the line. And at the end of our presentations, we're going to field some questions from the audience. Once again, if you have a question, feel free to send it to us via the window pane on the right of your screen. We'll be happy to get to as many questions as we can in the time allotted. Before we move to our next speaker, we're going to pause for a quick commercial break from one of our sponsors, AmeriGreen Energy.
AmeriGreen is a total energy wholesaler supplying biodiesel and all energy products to retail fuel distributors in the Mid-Atlantic and New England markets. They create markets for producers' fuels to successfully get to end users. AmeriGreen is proud to be an accredited BQ 9000 marketer. AmeriGreen's advantage is marketing fuels with a team of people you can trust for expert support. They were early adopters and champions of biodiesel and continue to adhere to stringent quality control standards. You can count on AmeriGreen for quality and competitive supply, expert logistics, and their years of unmatched experience being put to work for you. Ron?
Our next speaker this afternoon is Mike Devine. I've known Mike for quite a while in this industry. Mike is a great guy and a very good presenter, and probably one of the strongest proponents of biodiesel and bioheat that one could ever meet. Mike is the New England sales and marketing representative for biodiesel wholesaler AmeriGreen Energy. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ron. Good afternoon, everybody. And Ron, thank you very much for inviting us to present today. Biodiesel distribution has grown significantly in the United States over the past decade. Consider an industry that has grown from 20 million gallons in annual distribution to 1.8 billion gallons over a 10-year span. Biodiesel has provided a unique opportunity for terminal operators, petroleum distributors, and marketers to diversify their fuel product offerings at the very least, and in many cases, completely rebrand their corporate profiles. We hope to provide this afternoon a quick snapshot of the markets, regulatory impacts that have and will continue to drive production and economics, and ultimately shine a brighter light on the growing value of the biodiesel gallon. So when we speak about the growing biodiesel, the growing value of the biodiesel gallon, there are a couple of bullet points that we're going to try to hit on today. One is over the 20-year life cycle of biodiesel, the growing positive consumer attitudes that consumer surveys have been providing for the past 10 to 15 years. Surveys will show anywhere from a 5-to-1 to a 10-to-1 positive consumer attitude for the use and blending of biodiesel. Secondly is the successful balloting of B20 blends of B6 to B20 in ASTM for diesel use, and that balloting is ASTM D7467, and more recently the inclusion of blends of B6 to B20 into D396, the heating oil specification. These increased volumes are providing additional competition within the whole gallon, whether it be the diesel gallon or the heating oil gallon, which is now creating new markets, new sales, and additional market opportunities for the terminal operators and the petroleum distributors. A few of those opportunities, we certainly think of on-highway use, whether it be trucking, fleets, passenger vehicles, municipalities, whether it's in their own buildings or within their bus fleets, power generation, underground operations, mines, military uses, whether it be in jet fuel or on U.S. bases, agricultural and off-road uses, generator uses, locomotive uses, and most notably, the home heating oil market in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, where bioheat has generated such momentum that millions, hundreds of millions of gallons of biodiesel are moving into these markets on a regular basis, giving petroleum terminals, petroleum marketers the opportunity to expand and grow sales into these new markets. And last, but certainly not least, a new margin maker for the petroleum distributor. Just to provide a little bit of a current market overview, enclosed here is some data provided by the Jacobson, which shows the D4 ENTS data for 2015, starting January 1 and moving through July. The horizontal blue lines represent the RINs. The horizontal red lines represent the biomass-based diesel production category. Those were vertical. The horizontal green represents the average biodiesel production needed to meet the mandate, and the horizontal purple line represents the average RIN production to reach each mandate. And as we look at the charts here, we see that the first quarter production and thereby RIN generation was lagging a little bit, but once we move to April, we see production and RIN generating ramping up dramatically, where in July, the industry produced over 190 million gallons of biomass-based diesel. This brings us to production currently through July of just shy of 1 billion gallons of biomass-based diesel being produced, with another little over 700 million gallons needed to finish out from August through the balance of the year. Based on current production, those goals should be easily attainable. As we look at, as Bubba had referenced earlier, the industry in 2014 and the first part of 2015 was working to some degree without renewable volume obligations into those years, and were to some degree flying blind, which caused some stress on business plans. And on May 29th, when the renewable volume obligations were released by EPA, I think many in the industry were looking for a bump up in the RINs. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. We saw a dramatic decline in the ethanol RIN, represented here in the green line, the E15 line, or the D6 category, dropping dramatically on the release of the figures, and slowly and systematically the slow declines of the D5 or the E15 listed here, and the B15 or the D4 category continuing to fall as we went through the summer months. Another economic indication that is often used to look at the economics and production of biodiesel is the bean oil to heating oil spread, or the BOHO spread. And what this chart represents is the premium or positive that soybean oil has been trading over the heating oil markets through January of this year in a fairly consistent manner. If we look at this same chart a year ago, we would see something very different. A bean oil discount to heating oil that was ranging anywhere from 30 to 40 cents, but the severe drop in the price of the barrel has changed these economics dramatically, again, adversely affecting the pricing of biodiesel. The other economic factor that we keep a watchful eye from a regulatory standpoint is the biodiesel tax credit, which unfortunately so far for 2015 has not been in place. More recently, the Senate Finance Committee has passed a tax extenders package that includes a 2-year extension of tax credits for biodiesel, renewable diesel, and cellulosic biofuels. This bill would extend incentives for biodiesel and renewable diesel for 2 years through 2016, retroactive for 2015. During the hearing to address the extenders package, the committee accepted an amendment offered by Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa to change the biodiesel's fuel tax credit from a mixture or blender's credit to a production credit. The National Biodiesel Board has also supported the change in the tax credit and noted their concern that importers of biodiesel are already enjoying financial advantages that are not available to U.S. producers. Changing the tax structure to a producer's credit would end a growing practice where foreign biodiesel is being subsidized by U.S. taxpayers, simply being subsidized simply because it is blended in the United States. In some cases, the imported biodiesel is already being subsidized in its home country, creating an uneven playing field for the U.S. domestic biodiesel producer. So what does this mean as we look at the current market conditions? Today we have a $45 per barrel of crude. The bean oil to heating oil spread this morning was at a premium of 45 cents bean oil over heating oil. We've seen an approximate 40-cent decline in the D4 RIN over the past 90 days, all culminating in evaporating biodiesel blending economics in most parts of the U.S. So that leads us to a question. What do we do now? Does this mean that the marketing conversation is over if the arbitrage opportunity no longer exists? And while this is certainly not a position that we want to find ourselves as marketers of biodiesel, it does give us the opportunity to reset mentally exactly the product that we're marketing and the benefits of this product. Let's keep in mind a couple of very important talking points about biodiesel. Biodiesel creates American jobs. In a recent industry study found that the U.S. biodiesel industry supports more than 62,000 jobs. Additionally, biodiesel is strengthening our economic energy security by diversifying our fuel supplies so the economy is not so vulnerable to global petroleum markets over which we have little control. In looking at higher blends such as B20, how do B20 blends affect greenhouse gas and carbon emissions? Inclusion of biodiesel into diesel fuels reduce greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint in proportion to the amount of biodiesel blended. All fossil fuels, natural gas, propane, gasoline, diesel, fuel oil, increase the levels of greenhouse gas and carbon into our atmosphere. B100 reduces life cycle greenhouse gas emissions on average over 78% compared to that of diesel fuel or home heating oil. So a blend of B20 can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 15%. What are some of the other value-added benefits of biodiesel? It's renewable. It acts as a solvent. It provides added lubricity to ultra-low sulfur diesel fuels, and as they have found their way into the market since 2007, the loss of sulfur has also meant a loss of lubricity. That has had impacts on injectors and other facets having to do with the diesel engine. Biodiesel added even at a 2% percentage provides the lubricity benefits that you might find in a lot of over-the-counter additive packages. Biodiesel can also be used at a 20% blend in most diesel and heating oil applications with little to no modifications. As we stated before, it reduces greenhouse gas and carbon emissions. It can help reduce tailpipe emissions. Biodiesel is non-toxic, biodegradable, and does not require placarding for transport. Biodiesel has found a lot of success across markets, both on the majors and on the independents. But in our experience, we've seen the independent terminal operator and the independent petroleum distributor and marketer really embrace this opportunity as a game changer. Successful biodiesel does requires marketing. Marketing requires some investment in education and outreach to the marketplace. And this is a key point. Over the past 10 years, biodiesel has been a game changer for scores of entrepreneurial terminal operators and petroleum distributors. Biodiesel blended product offerings provide new sales and branding opportunities to grow market share in some of the market segments we previously highlighted. And again, over the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen increased sales margins for our distributors by blending biodiesel. We see at AmeriGreen biodiesel as a strategic partnership, and our role is one of connecting the dots from the biodiesel producer to the terminal operator, from the terminal operator to the petroleum distributors, and then ultimately to fleets, C-stores, and the oil heat consumers. Biodiesel can be moved effectively in several modes of transportation. The AmeriGreen model, we have strategic procurement and terminal locations across the United States Mid-Atlantic and Northeast petroleum markets, relationships with dynamic fleets, exclusive rail agreements, and moving biodiesel through high-capacity barge. The AmeriGreen biodiesel program and our key distributor points and benefits, we look at biodiesel marketing as beginning at home, starting within the organization. Company training is essential to be able to speak and communicate articulately about biodiesel, so that whether it be consumer education, fleet education, we're building the awareness and the benefits of biodiesel downstream. Remember, to make greater margins, there's an investment in the education and the outreach. That money invested does come back. Key sales talking points of interest for our distributors, we like to center on fuel performance first. Biodiesel blended with heating oil and diesel fuel not only biodiesel improves the fuel from a solvency standpoint, but the lubricity benefits also create essentially a better fuel to consume and to market. The environmental benefits are certainly there in droves, and the American consumer loves the opportunity to take an American-produced renewable energy. Some of the opportunities for the companies are within corporate rebranding and obviously margin enhancement. You'll be viewed as an industry leader in your markets, and biodiesel marketing provides a great opportunity for public relations and an opportunity to be your own testimonial. Sorry, folks, I'm having some problems moving the slide here. There we go. The biodiesel marketer and the distributor business plan. Just to kind of wrap it up here. What we have found is marketing beyond the arbitrage and creating a biodiesel program is the most successful way to develop and enhance your margins over a long period of time. So making a commitment to biodiesel as a constant in your business plan, regardless of where those blend economics be. Finding the right blending balance for your organization and marketplace with B20 blends centered as your end game. Providing biodiesel education and outreach information to the end user. Marketing biodiesel today will generate increased profit margins for your organization into the future. And biodiesel allows you the opportunity to go on the offensive, renew, rebrand your company, and create a buzz, being more than just another petroleum distributor. When we turn, just kind of as a sidebar in thinking about our presentation today, when we turn on the evening news tonight, it's likely that we'll see two stories that dominate the telecasts. One will be the President's trip to Alaska and the subsequent meetings with world leaders to address the impending impacts of climate change that we all collectively, and that we all need to collectively take action soon, or otherwise the damage will be irreversible. The second story of note will focus on the nationalism nerve that Donald Trump has tapped into, that globalization has not been favorable to most Americans. Policies need to be created around supporting a new American industries, new jobs, and keeping our dollars at home. Whether or not you may agree with these stories, the messaging is on the mind of the American consumer today and will likely be part of the presidential primaries. Once again, there's an opportunity for effective biodiesel marketing in your communities that can move the optics of petroleum products from being part of the problem to being part of the solution. Please feel free to contact me if you have any question. And Ron, thank you very much again for inviting us to participate on this webinar this afternoon.
Hey, thank you, Mike. As always, it's great to hear your perspective, and hopefully we'll hear more of it as we get to the questions and answers session here in a little bit. Finally, I'd like to welcome our third and final panelist. It's Brian Roberts. Brian is the president of Cowichan Biodiesel Cooperative in Duncan, British Columbia, Canada. I had the pleasure to meet Brian for the first time. I think it was in the 2012 collective biodiesel conference that was held in Temecula, California. And subsequently, I met Brian again last year in North Carolina during last year's collective biodiesel conference. Brian, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me, Ron. I'm really pleased to be here, and certainly I can echo a lot of the conclusions and sentiments that Mike just spoke of in his presentation, and I think we can give a pretty good working example of just how important that marketing aspect is and that relationship with your clients is. It's certainly something that we've focused on a lot, and it's really overcoming those obstacles that have led us to our development of a low-cost, high-tech point-of-sale system that I'm going to be talking about during this presentation. So thanks again, and As Ron said, my name is Brian Roberts. I'm with the Cowichan Biodiesel Cooperative, and I actually represent a lot of different organizations, not just the co-op, and organizations that have partnered to create the Cowichan Biofuel Facility in Duncan, British Columbia. So this is maybe a little bit different than a lot of the facilities across North America. It's what we call a community scale biodiesel facility, because it's this interesting partnership between nonprofits, for-profits, a co-op, and also the regional government, the Cowichan Valley Regional District. So we're hosted on their Bings Creek recycling facility in Duncan. So quite unique, and of course our group is dedicated to using higher blends of biodiesel, pretty much the highest blends we can get, B100s, to achieve all these great benefits. And I think the most important one that isn't lost on us is that this is basically a solution that can be used now with existing technologies. And as you can kind of see by this Rudolph Diesel quote, this is nothing new, the use of biofuels and vegetable oils for as a source of fuel. And I think it kind of reminds me of another quote by Mark Twain, that history may not repeat, but it sure does rhyme. Here we are again 100 years later looking at vegetable oils as a solution for fuel use. For a lot of other different reasons, of course, with climate change, and you know, at least until fracking began, the concept of peak oil. We hosted the Collective Biofuel Conference in 2011. It's actually, just to avoid some confusion, we called it the Collective Biofuels Conference when we hosted it there. It's actually the Collective Biodiesel Conference, but we hosted that in 2011 in Duncan, and we're part of this larger collective of kind of community scale cooperatives and small, mid-sized collectors, producers, distributors all across North America, and we meet every year to share information and kind of talk about the trials and tribulations, the obstacles, the progress, and the opportunities. So just looking a little bit at our operations here, basically three legs of the of what we call the stool for creating the biodiesel. First of all, we have GreaseCycle, which is an employee-owned private for-profit corporation that collects the UCO and delivers that to the Cowichan Biofuel Facility, where it's processed and then distributed to about 200 members through the Cowichan Biodiesel Cooperative. Now, I could talk for the entire time about why we've created a model like this, but basically, all these different organizations have different benefits. With the nonprofit Cowichan Energy Alternatives for fundraising, education, and outreach, the co-op is a great model for distribution when you're starting out and getting into really, what is a very difficult industry to get into, and the petroleum services industry. So what you're seeing here is our creative way of overcoming the obstacle of recreating the entire petroleum service industry from scratch with no money, really, and doing it with biofuels to replace petroleum. So it's led to a lot of interesting kind of, I guess, solutions to overcome many, many obstacles. And one of them being also that here in British Columbia, we it's kind of interesting because the province has some very, very good policies. We have a carbon tax, we have a carbon market, great things for helping to promote the use of biofuels, at least on paper. But unfortunately, one of the taxes is a carbon tax, which actually applies to higher blends of biofuel, anything over B5. And so that's actually a tax that actually it's a disincentive to using higher blends, whereas in the U.S. you have about nearly a 30 cent a liter credit through your RIN system. So one of the ways we've been able to address that is we created so we work with an organization called the Community Carbon Marketplace, which quantifies the greenhouse gas reductions and then sells them as carbon credits to partners who want to reduce their carbon emissions. And so we've been able to recapture some of the losses from that carbon tax. And we share all this information with other organizations throughout British Columbia through another nonprofit organization called the BC Biofuel Network that works to advocate for small and mid-sized collectors, producers, and distributors of biofuel, and of course share information. So if you look at our value chain, we now have an added piece. We also calculate the greenhouse gas reductions, and we sell those carbon credits. And of course, that's just part of how we've had to be very, very resourceful to overcome obstacles and to do things with very, very little capital. And so of course, none of that happens unless you can actually sell the fuel. And I've been to a number of different conferences where there's a lot of focus on collecting more oil and processing it as as efficiently and the best way possible. But without this marketing component, we're really missing the most important part of the value chain. And as Mike was talking about, by direct marketing to the consumers themselves of the product, you can capture the most value from the product that you're producing. So with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the evolution of biofuel distribution with our growing organization. So we started out as quite a grassroots, small organization. We actually sold biodiesel by the jug at the farmers market. That was our first and earliest distribution when we were starting out in a very, very small scale production. We then moved on to what I call slightly less primitive distribution, where we just used a fill-right pump and really a 1,000-liter heating oil tank. And that, of course, got us we opened that on a weekend in I believe, 2008. And by Monday morning, we had gotten a call from Weights and Measures saying that, of course, a fill-right pump is not a great system for marketing or for engaging in trade because it doesn't meet Weights and Measures certification, which we overcame that obstacle by then bringing on a new B100 card lock service, which was the top of the line in the 1990s, but again has there's some bottlenecks there with the technology, but certainly it was something that helped us a great deal with getting on to a next level and allowed us then to open the island's first B100 card lock, and it's Vancouver Island where we're located. And there's kind of a funny picture here too, because when we open that, you can see we have our Member of Parliament, Gene Crowder, and we have our Mayor, Phil from Duncan, Phil Kent, and the photo's blurry because we had a very, very, I guess, excited member, Lynn, who was coming through the ribbon pretty quickly, and I think the photographer was running for their life there in that particular photo, which made it a little blurry. Now, this started to get us a lot of attention as we started to increase production and our collection. We started being able to sell more and more B100, and a real breakthrough for us was when we started selling to fleets, and one of them being Cruise Victoria Services, which was a tour bus company in Victoria, and they went to B100, which we thought was absolutely amazing. This bus company doing that, and as far as we know, it was one of the first bus companies to go to B100. And they had some great success with it and had no mechanical issues, so it was a real breakthrough for us. Now, one of the challenges, though, an obstacle, is though we go back to our blending pump, or our pump here, and our point of sale system, and what we have is limited blends and functionality. It's inconvenient. It's not something we can really grow with, and it's not something we can really service a lot of fleets and fleet needs with. Largely what we're selling here out of this pump is B100. So we started asking questions, or what are some other obstacles that, what are our other co-ops facing these same obstacles, and what are they doing about it? So we ran a survey with co-ops across North America just to find out what they were doing to, what affordable solutions they were coming up with. And so we asked basically 4 main questions. We wanted to look at the objectives were to define the ideal biofuel distribution system to access a larger petroleum sales market. We wanted to research and compare existing distribution and point-of-sale systems. We wanted to identify the gaps between the needs of the biofuel community and existing point-of-sale systems, and then plan a collective approach for ongoing development of that ideal, universally applicable point-of-sale system. And that was done by, it was basically a North America-wide co-op survey conducted by Jesse Bradish, the Chicago Biofuels Co-op, and Hassan Rahim with our co-op, the Cowichan Biodiesel Co-op. So, survey said, unsurprising with co-ops, kind of at a grassroots level, that B100 is #1, that basically the co-ops want to use pure blends of biodiesel mostly, and there's, to a lesser extent, B50, B20 also wanting to be used. So we're basically preaching to the converted here and people that want to use the highest blends, but when we look at what kind of pump options they have or how they're distributing it, we're finding that using basically ancient mechanical or fill-right pumps, and so we don't really have a great solution for distributing that to members. And when we look at the system software, we find that there's basically no real software. And what you can see down at the bottom there is there's one co-op group using BioPay, and that's our group. And there's another group using BDB 9000, which was the Baltimore biodiesel co-op. their solution, they came up with something very similar to what we did by creating this very kind of cheap point-of-sale system that they use with their own pump. But again, what you can see is that there's no real turnkey solutions here. And so survey results are that for co-ops anyways, people want a small mobile fleet fueling setup. They want it to be self-contained as much as possible, certified pump, automated 24/7. They're not really talking about blends as much, but because typically they want B100. And kind of going on here, we look at some other considerations that if we're going to try and create a solution that can be used North America wide, something's going to have to be weights and measures, certified, and be able to be, I guess, adaptable to use different, to apply different taxes and other things as well. So moving on here, for conclusions, we see there are currently no affordable turnkey distribution solutions to serve the biofuel needs of communities, not at the level that we're looking at the kind of small scale to mid-scale level. But there is an untapped demand for one from co-ops across North America. So that creates an opportunity. So and the question is, do fleet managers have the same needs? Because one of the other things that our co-op has been focusing on more and more is servicing fleets, not just co-op members who want B100. And so what are some of the needs of those fleet managers? And as I said before, our partner here in the Cowichan Valley is the Cowichan Valley Regional District. They host the facility, and they're committed to purchasing biodiesel to meet carbon neutral commitments. So this regional government is committed to becoming carbon neutral, and they see biodiesel as a strategy for doing that. Now there are some obstacles for being able to get them to use higher blends of biodiesel, and so when we talk to their fleet managers, we find that they have fleet vehicles that are on warranty that need only B5 or B20, or else they'll break the warranty. They also have non-warranted vehicles where they're dedicated to using B100 to maximize greenhouse gas reductions, and that's in the summer though, but in the winter we want to make sure that we're kind of risk managing with them for cold flow issues, and so we want to have a B50 option because really it's a fleet that's providing a public service, and we can't have it down for any reason when if the temperature dips. And typically we don't have that problem here in Vancouver Island. It's quite warm, but we still, from a risk management perspective, we have B50 as an important option also for the winter. So that brings us back to the obstacle again. We have our current pump has limited blends and functionality, and again, it's inconvenient because it's a very old system with a phone fax modem for communicating between the office and the pump itself. So it's absolutely not a solution, largely because it's got two blends, B50 and B100. So on the progress side, we started to move towards a blending pump application, and so the solution seemed to be this really great, inexpensive blending pump, and we can get these surplus when gas stations, I guess, when they retrofit and they get rid of these pumps, and we can get them at pennies on the dollar, and it doesn't take too much to adapt them to be blending pumps for offering 4 different blends: B5, B20, B50, and B100. Now, when we look at all the different components, we need to be able to market that to different consumers. That gives us one part of the equation. Basically, number one, we have the pump, but essentially it's still a dumb pump because there's no point-of-sale system on it. There's no fleet management software, and so that became another obstacle. So what we need to do is we need a robust but inexpensive way to interface surplus pumps with a point-of-sale system that does not involve envelopes in a mailbox built on the side of the pump, which many small-scale co-ops, that's their point-of-sale system. It's a trust system, so not very good for managing, fleet, the needs of fleets. Now, on the progress side, we've been working with, we kind of created this BC solution by working with another co-op, the Vancouver Biodiesel Co-op, and they have one of their members is Luke Close, a software engineer who created a system called BioPay, which we've then built on and developed to be able to use it with a blending pump. It was quite rudimentary at the start, and we've just added to that because this is an open source software that we're able to adapt and to build on. So the way that point of sale system works now. Basically, for the biodiesel co-op member, it's absolutely a breeze to use. It's very simple. You go in, you input your user ID and your password, you select the biofuel grade, it pumps the fuel and completes the transaction. So very easy, very convenient. Basically use Perl code to control the pump, and a Raspberry Pi. This is kind of the firmware that connects the pump to the cloud, and it does so really looking at the display. That the pump is basically the only information that we're getting from the pump itself is we're reading what the volume is, the exact volume, using all the weights and measures certified, pump and measuring equipment that the pump comes with. So then, for the biodiesel co-op administrator, we can control fuel pricing, charging and reporting. We communicate directly with the pump. And it's all done through secure web app using SSL. And so it's a cloud-hosted open source application. It's secure communication to the pump, robust, resilient, accessible, convenient. So it's actually given us something that has some really strong functionality that makes this what was pretty much a dumb pump a really smart, really easy to use pump. That allows us to manage both all the needs of our co-op members and also fleet managers' needs as well. So this is what it typically looks like for a typical member. You can see something for me here, and there's not a lot of information just yet. This is our first pump and our first point of sale system, so we're just running the pilot right now. It hasn't been open to co-op members yet, and that'll be happening sometime in September. So all these pages that I'm going to show you, these screen captures, aren't showing a lot of information right now, and of course we'll have more data once that opens, but right now the main user is the Cowichan Valley Regional District and their fleet. And when the pilot is finished, we'll open that up. So here you can just displays the different transactions. It can tell you how much biodiesel is being used versus regular diesel, and basically the receipt is sent by email directly to your email address, and it's pretty much instantaneous. As soon as you've put in the pump and the pump turns off, an email is generated and sent right away with your receipt. And also talking about how much your greenhouse gas reductions, how much greenhouse gas reductions you have, and breaking down the taxes and everything else for your records. So that gives us a complete solution now. We have the pump, we have the firmware, and we have the cloud-based point-of-sale system. And so the opportunity that we see here is that this is something that can be used as a turnkey system in communities all over British Columbia, which is obviously, of course, where we're focused on. But also it's something I think that gives a solution to other co-ops, maybe small fleets around North America that's quite affordable. Some further investment is needed to be able to look at each need in each one of those communities, but for the most part, we have a system now that we feel very very confident in that works and services quite a diverse set of needs. And with that, I'd just like to end that brings an end to my presentation. So our focus again has been on solutions that kind of serve kind of community scale needs, but also look to some of the larger global needs as well. And I think we've done that with this point of sale system that allows kind of communities and even fleet users to maximize their biodiesel use and their greenhouse gas reductions at all at a fraction of the cost of what it would be to putting in your own gas station.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Great job on your presentation. We're going to be moving to the questions and answers portion of the webinar. A quick note before we do that, though, our broadcast is being recorded, and so all registered attendees will receive a link within a few days to access the webinar if they want to go back and review the slides or listen to a point that they may have missed that a speaker had presented. Now, just a reminder, if you do have a question for our panelists, feel free to send it in on the right side of your screen there in the window pane to your right in the questions area, and we'll receive them and try to get to as many as we can. Our first question is for Bubba. Bubba, the question is taxation for fuels simpler in Canada or the United States?
I think I'm biased there. I probably have to say it's simpler in Canada than it is the United States, simply because of the mass amount of borders that you can cross and the different laws and rules and regulations pertaining to the different RACs point of origin. So I'd have to say it's simpler in Canada than it is the U.S. Not to say that Canada's simple.
I'm going to throw this question out for all of the panelists. It came in while Brian was speaking, so maybe Brian, if you want to start it off, and then Mike or Bubba can chime in and give their response. But do the inclusion percentages for biodiesel in the diesel ASTM have the potential to create confusion for higher blend users? And then there's an example. I am a fleet that uses B10 on road. I order B10, but it could be anywhere from B16 to B30 without me knowing. How do I know my actual blend percentage? And I guess before I throw it to you, I would just say that there are companies that offer blend analyzers, such as Wilkes, a Spectra scientific company. They offer handheld blend analyzers. But if Brian, Mike, or Bubba, if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, I think that may be a good question for Bubba, because with the way that we work is we focus on B100. We've only recently gotten into diesel, and the blending pump application that we use, we just buy B100 or produce it, and then we buy regular diesel, and we fill two separate tanks, one with B100 and one with diesel, and so the blending all happens at the pump. And so typically we don't have to worry about buying blends ourselves. So yeah, I think Bubba's probably better to answer that question than I am.
Yeah, at a wholesale level, you can basically determine what the blend ratio is based on the FTA code associated with the invoice. The FTA code is going to start with a B, and it's going to have a number afterwards, and it'll tell you what the blend happens specifically to be on that. It's required for majority of the states, and I know for the federal level, so that you can get your reporting accurate in terms of the total gallons that you're blending, especially if you're the blender of record. Other than that, if you're pulling up to a pump at a service station or stuff, and the station can read that the diesel that you're buying can be anywhere from 0 biodiesel to a 20% blend, there's absolutely no way that you can tell what's been blended in that tank at that point at a retail level that I know of at this point in time. So I hope that answered your questions.
All right, thanks, guys. We've got a question for Brian. The question is, Brian, interesting model. How do you modify the purchased pumps to operate on biodiesel, and how does it blend biodiesel?
Right. So how do we modify? That's probably a more complicated question. And as I talked about briefly, really, we're not really modifying the pump at all. All we're doing is we're sticking extra equipment on it. So basically, using a logic analyzer, you can read the signal that's sent to the display, which basically is indicating, the amount of liters, the exact amount of liters that you're purchasing, and then we just take that and then we use that to calculate the price in our software. So we use all the existing pump, measurement equipment and the pump itself. And yeah, then our point of sale system software just puts on the appropriate taxes and price and everything else, and then sends the receipt to you and the price on a display on the pump itself. So as far as yeah, and sorry, what was the second part of the question there?
Let me see. How does it blend biodiesel?
How does it blend? It's all mechanical in the pump itself. So you can set the blend ratio to anything you want, and we've set it to B5, B20, B50, and B100 to be able to meet, all the needs of co-op members who want mostly B100, and of course the regional government or any other fleet vehicles that may be on warranty. And warranties in North America tend to be either B5 or B20. Blends over that are not are not warranted. But then when vehicles come off warranty, and you would have seen a picture of a front-end loader that was being filled up in one of the pictures in my presentation. It was being filled up with B100 in the summer. So vehicles off warranty can go up to higher blends with typically no problems, except maybe checking the fuel filter is pretty much one of the major things to have to keep an eye on. And then B50 in the winter. So all the blending happens in the pump. It's all mechanical.
Thanks, Brian. We've got a question for all of you. Are we producing too much biodiesel as evidenced by dropping RIN prices?
I think that one probably doesn't apply so much to me. We don't, since we don't have the RINs in British Columbia. Looks like we're coming up with a different system, which I think will be similar to RINs. So we're quite hopeful of that. But for the most part, we don't deal with the RINs here unless we're importing the fuel. And then of course the RINs aren't applicable if the fuel isn't, I think, being produced and consumed in the U.S. So again, it doesn't apply to us in Canada.
Yeah, it's obviously there's opinions on that, but my belief that the drop in the RIN prices has to do with the continued improvement in the automation of tracking and controlling RINs to the point where the system's more efficient in terms of controlling RINs. So it's a cost that's come out of the system and managing the system itself, not necessarily an oversupply of biodiesel.
I would also add that I think what we're seeing to some degree is with the decline of the or the flatlining of the ethanol RVO, that we've seen an immediate drop in that D6 RIN, and as that RIN has dropped, it has opened up the arbitrage opportunity for the Brazilian ethanol to become imported into strategic locations in the U.S. And as that arbitrage opens, that generates more activity in the D5 category, in the advanced biofuel category, and as the anticipation of more of that Brazilian sugarcane ethanol comes in and generates those RINs, then you're seeing that D5 category that could have seen a more robust RIN pricing needed to be supported by, say, the biodiesel RIN not being there. So I think that spread has contributed to that ARB open, which has kind of brought the overall complex down with it a little bit.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Bubba, and thanks, Brian. We've got a question from an ethanol producer. We are currently extracting non-food grade corn oil, and we see opportunity to adopt technology to further process that corn oil into biodiesel. What is the panel advice on either producing biodiesel or renewable diesel product?
Well, depending on where the location is and what their investment is and what their production is, they may find a very good market out on the West Coast with some of the carb credits. Some of that reused cooking oil or distillers grain oil could provide. So that might be their first look in their due diligence to see what that opportunity, and again, based on the amount of investment capital required and based upon what the logistics are, that might be a very viable market for them.
Yeah, only thing I can add to that is be sure you tax it correctly.
Hey, I got a question for Brian. Brian, oh, go ahead, Brian, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm just saying again from my perspective, we're focused on waste cooking oil collection. So all our products from recycled cooking oils. As we start to grow more, we can probably look at virgin oils more, but corn isn't really as big a commodity here as canola, so it would probably be canola. So again, it doesn't really apply to us so much in Canada.
Brian, I have a question for you. Did you say that your pump was UL certified, Underwriters Laboratory certified for B100?
Sorry, did I say what? Is it certified for selling B100?
Is it certified by UL, Underwriters Laboratory, for selling B100? That's the question.
No, it isn't, and so I'd have to find out a little bit more about that certification. So, is that an American-based certification organization? Because it's not something that I believe we have up in Canada. I could be wrong.
Well, we can certainly follow up with the question.
Sure, if someone would like to kind of contact me directly, but I have to find out a little bit more about the UL certification. As far as I know, that's not something that applies to us up here.
Let me see here. We've got We've got a comment from one of the earlier presentations. We are an industrial non-mobile user of the byproducts of biodiesel production. To be economical, we need the blender's credit to use crude glycerin, so we could help each other by keeping that provision of the tax credit. I guess that might be more of a comment than a question. I'd like to take a moment and maybe address some of the questions that we set out in the synopsis of the panel, and I'd like maybe each of you to tackle the question directly. How has the delayed RFS rules and more recently low diesel prices affected the build out of the biodiesel distribution infrastructure? Are we seeing growth still? Are we seeing retraction? Are we seeing reorganization? Could you guys each speak to that point?
Sure. Who would like to go first there?
Who'd you like to go first, Ron?
Mike?
I think that I would have, if you had asked me in January, February, March of this year, what impact not having clarification from the EPA would have, I think myself included and a lot of other people in the industry, we were hoping for and expecting a bit of a bounce on the RINs, and initially that day we did see some, but as we look back now 90 days later, what we've seen is a decline in the overall complex. So I think the positive is that at least there's some clarity on the RINs front from a biodiesel and an RFS standpoint, and I think knowledge is power. So I guess I would answer it that way. It certainly hasn't been as beneficial for the economics, but I think knowing it is very significant. As far as the expansion of the fuels, you know, biodiesel has gone through, if we look longer out, it's gone through a pretty good, I would argue, 4 to 5 year period where, you know, if you've, depending on where you are in the country, you've had some decent blending economics. Out in the Northeast, for a lot of our distributors, we've been able to provide blending economics for the past couple of years, going back 2, 3, 4 years. So I think that has, whenever there's a blending opportunity, the market starts to look at it, starts to make investments. It's obviously from an engineering standpoint, on a terminal standpoint, it takes some time to be able to execute it. But we still see distributors making investments in biodiesel and distribution. So yeah, I think the market, the infrastructure market, is still bullish. I think if the RINs continue to slide, we'll see if that tapers off a little bit more for some of the obligated parties. But I think overall it's still pretty bullish out there.
No, I can probably jump in next.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak about that. This is Brian from the couch, and so for the most part, again, as I said, we don't have the RINs here. We do have renewable fuel standards and a low carbon fuel objective from the province. But it's a much different environment here. As I said, we don't have the RINs. We have a carbon tax that basically penalizes use of higher blends. But we do have some very other interesting things, as I said, like the carbon market. And the carbon tax has worked really well in a lot of other sectors. It just seems to be this one oversight that's really impacting higher blends of biodiesel. So the environment hasn't been that great here even before the market started tanking, and there's not a lot of investment in the sector at all. I think we're probably one of the last people standing in the province that is making and distributing high blends of biodiesel directly to consumers. And so we're very, very hopeful that the province of British Columbia has come up with basically a new credit system, or it's still kind of being rolled out. It's called a Part 3 agreements that you make with the province, and so we're still quite hopeful about that could provide a kind of a shot in the arm for the biofuel market in British Columbia. But we're kind of yet to see how that's going to pan out and how the market's really going to adapt to that new system and how it could help the market. So we'll see in maybe another year or two how that works.
Thanks, Brian. We've got a few more questions that have come in. This one says, referring to the maturity curve for biodiesel, which factors bring about the decline phase? Also referring to the carbon footprint of biofuels, is the pre-production CO2 footprint taken into account, or is this just the post-production? Not sure which of you would like to look at that.
I can address that from our perspective, since we do the carbon footprint analysis in all our production. So yes, we look at all the pre-production as well, as much as possible. And so because we're using recycled cooking oils, we probably have one of the lowest carbon intensity biodiesels that you can get. So yes, all down the chain, from the collection of the cooking oil to how you process it to how it's distributed. And because we distribute locally also, we're not transporting great distances. So again, I think from our perspective, we probably have one of the lowest carbon intensity biodiesels, at least in our province in British Columbia.
Brian, we've got a comment on the UL certification. A listener has said Canadian Standards Association and UL are rough equivalents.
Right. So again, with our pump, it's basically the pump is all CSA certified. So we're not altering anything in the pump itself. All we're doing is reading the display, and so there's, as I said, there's been no kind of alteration of the system there. We're just adding on a way of reading that and then transmitting that to the cloud. So it may be that's something that we can investigate a little bit further. We're still in the pilot stage, and certainly things like that, and having a dialogue with weights and measures is still on our agenda. And we're just actually in the process of getting an inspection of the pump before we open it up to the public. So those are all things that are definitely on our mind. We're not anticipating any problems just because of the way that we've developed our point of sale system.
We've got a question for Bubba. Bubba, what are the costs of Avalara's services, and what type of client are you targeting? Large-scale producer, 10 million gallons per year plus, or is this something that would be cost-effective for a smaller-scale producer? How long has Avalara been targeting the biofuels industry? And Bubba, are you a one-man band, or do you have a large group of regional support staff?
All right, we'll start backwards on that. Avalara is a 900-employee company. It has offices all the way from London to Seattle, Washington. I'm currently sitting in the Durham office, which holds about 190 people on its own. Avalara basically services companies from the smallest company that you could possibly think of, all the way up to the two largest companies in the world, which is in the oil and gas industry, which obviously is ExxonMobil and Walmart, Sam's. So the product itself is very broad and very wide in terms of its capabilities, but we actually price the product based on what portion of the product you're actually going to be using. An example of that would be if you're filing a return in a specific jurisdiction, that return may have 33 schedules associated with it. Those 33 schedules may only have like 4 or 5 schedules that pertain to biodiesel. And so we're only going to charge you based on the actual returns within inside of state that you file and the schedules associated with that return. So your price could be anywhere from $100 per month for a return and schedule, and the use of the compliance reporting system, which is SaaS-based, which means that we're taking care of all of the rule changes for you, all the migration of the code, all the research for the rates, the rules, the EDI filing, the XML filing structures, all of that. All you basically have to have is a computer with internet access, and you can use our software to file your compliance returns. From a tax determination standpoint, as it bolts onto a back office system so you can tax transactions properly, we sell that at a jurisdictional level, and we sell it based on whether you're in the bulk chain, whether you're having a rack transactions or you're having below the rack transactions or any combination of those three, and the number of products that you're dealing with determine the basis and complexity of your business model. So it's priced to meet your business model. Obviously, if you're strictly in the biodiesel industry and you're selling B100 at a rack, you're going to be using less of the functionality in the scenarios that we've built up that ExxonMobil would be, who's dealing with jet fuel, avgas, diesel, dyed diesel, kerosene, et cetera, all along the supply chain. So it's based on your business model and how much of the software you're actually going to be utilizing with inside the system. So the price range is based literally on your business model. Hopefully I explained that appropriately and answered all the questions, because it was a long question. Is there anything that I didn't answer?
Well, perhaps you can, what type of client are you targeting?
Within the system, we're targeting clients that both are the producers of biodiesel and market biodiesel at a wholesale level, and we're also marketing and targeting clients that are blending biodiesel and ethanol at the rack or below the rack and selling that within inside of the retail organization. So it's everybody on that supply chain that you're dealing with. It's we have, obviously you've got from a reporting standpoint, if you're a refinery, you have a FCN number that's been provided to you by the U.S. government on the U.S. side of the business, and you have to file either the 720 quarterly return, 720 TO, the 720 CS return, depending if you own your own transportation arm associated with that, or if you're operating as a facility control number or a TCN terminal control number. If you're just picking up biodiesel and having it delivered to your location and you're blending biodiesel to meet specific customer needs as a distributor, I'm targeting that market also. So it's whether you're a blender of record or you're a producer and wholesaler or you're all the way up and down the supply chain, I'm targeting all portions of that supply chain. I'm not specific to just the producer or just the distributor.
Gotcha. Very well said, Bubba. We've got a question about fleets, and this I think Mike would be able to tackle this. Mike, how do we engage the railroads, the #2 industry consumer of diesel, to up their use of biodiesel for the lubricity benefits?
That's a good question. It's been an area of focus, I know, over the past couple of years for Steve Howell at the National Biodiesel Board in trying to help integrate biodiesel marketing into the railroads specifically. I think a lot of it is going to depend on the line, and it's going to depend on regionally how the fuels are being purchased and what kind of blending opportunities there might be. As many people probably have found on the call, biodiesel, a desire to have it in your marketplace, will sometimes be predicated on the ability to blend it, whether it be at the terminal level or not, and be able to facilitate, those deliveries. So it'll depend on the line. We've seen more activity on some of the shorter local lines than we have on some others, is my recollection on that. But again, I think it's one of those opportunities for outreach. If you've got stations, if they've got tanks, if they're bringing in fuels, that's worth reaching out to, for some of those locomotives that are still burning, petroleum-based fuels.
All right. Well, once again, thank you to our panelists. That is all the time we have for questions today. I do want to bring to the attention of our attendees a special discount code that you can use for being on our webinar. It's a $250 discount for registration to the National Advanced Biofuels Conference and Expo taking place October 26th through October 28th in Omaha, Nebraska. Using the code WEBINAR, you can save $250 on registration for this event. Finally, I'd like to thank our panelists again for their participation today, and those of you listening, and once again, a special thanks to our sponsors, Avalara and AmeriGreen Energy. We appreciate your attention, and our broadcast is now concluded.